Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Vullgaren, and this is the Battleborn Beta, which at the time of recording has only come out on the PS4 and not yet on the Xbox One and PC. Now, small disclaimer here, I fucking hate MOBAs so much. Just get out of here. No League of Legends, no Dota, no Smite. I think that's the other one that people play. I've tried all of them, and I despise all of them, except for there was a Lord of the Rings one on PS3, and it did the job when the old PlayStation Plus put it on free. Played it, it was dead, but it was cool. It was a good game. Now, Battleborn's stepped into the scene, the makers of the Borderlands franchise, and man, is it heavily influenced by that, let me tip you. The animation style and just the whole art feel of the entire game, incredibly Borderlandsy, but quite nice. Not as comic book-ish as Borderlands, but it definitely has the cartoon and very accentuated looks of all of the different characters, the maps, the mobs, that kind of thing. The biggest similarities between the old Borderlands and Battleborn is the storytelling, which is very much the same. It's split into multiplayer and single player, but the single player could be played with co-op. So what they're doing is releasing a very small section of the story to start with, and then through free updates as the game progresses, they will be releasing story backgrounds, which pretty much gives you a background and lore for each of the characters in the game. It's pretty interesting. In the beta, we have access to 2 missions. Of those 2 missions, I played both single and with co-op. There's various challenges you can do to unlock and sort of work towards skill progression, which gives you various credits, things like that, which sort of go into the item and level progression of your characters that you choose to play, and unlocking more characters. They have their very similar, very Borderlandsy style of humour, a little bit of swearing, some inappropriate jokes, just all-round silliness, as we know and love Borderlands 4. But for the most part, it's a pretty solid storyline, and some entertaining gameplay. Through the first 2 missions, I think there's probably about 6 bosses, all of which require different sort of strategies and tactics to beat, which is nice. It's not just the same go here, slap this thing to death, go there, slap that thing to death. There's various stages and ads that you have to manage or kill throughout the 2 story missions. And then as we jump, oh god, my phone just rang. How unprofessional. But then also on the multiplayer side, which is where it really gets interesting, you have your very standard 2 modes. There's Meltdown and Incursion. Now with Meltdown, you have 2 lanes, you have 2 sets of mobs, and your goal is to get those sets of mobs into the grinders of the enemy mobs, which are 2 static buildings. And the whole idea is the more mobs you get in, the more points you get, and it's the first to 500, I believe. Yes, first to 500. And the whole point of it, I think, is trying to appease the robot overlords that, for some reason, have domain over the particular, whether it's the map or just the whole mode in general. I'm not sure. On that, it's 5v5, so you have 5 Battleborn, as the heroes are called in this, versus another 5 Battleborn. Throughout the map's duration, you can build turrets, you can build healing stations, you can build accelerator stations, which are pretty cool, which gives you a very slick speed boost, which feels really nice. When you get there, it's quite, makes for a lot more enjoyment of you actually getting around the map. So it's not like your traditional style in Dota, where if you die and you respawn back at your base, it takes you fucking 15 minutes to get out into the fray. You can actually make it back from base pretty quick. Speaking of the base, it's also a really good way to get your health back. So supply stations, which are the ones that actually give you health back, which you have to build and upgrade, only do it in quite small chunks, and it can take a wee while. You're looking at probably about 40 seconds just standing there waiting. Or you can just teleport back to base, flies back to base, fills you back up with health, you're out there, you're slapping bitches around, it's great. The other mode that we have is the Incursion mode. That is pretty much one sort of snaking pathway from your base all the way to the enemy's base, and it's just 1 lane. And in that lane, they send piles of mobs again, but your objective is to kill 2 sentry bots, which are protecting the enemy's lane. Once you kill one, you can then keep pushing, hopefully, and get up there and then kill the second one, which will be sitting further up, and then you win. Most of the time that I have played this, though, it's happened to go, we run out of time. The time is 30 minutes, and then it's just whoever has done the most damage to the opponent's, or either of the opponent's sentry bots. They've got your very standard MOBA-esque systems in place. So you start off and level up all over again at the start of each game from 1 to 10. And as you go up from 1 to 10, you have access to the Helix, which has 2 sort of trees of skills that you can pick and choose from. You can mix and match them both, which I've been doing most of the time, or you can go hard down the left side or hard down the right side. They give you brief descriptions in your character bios about the 2 different types of play, and you can see as you read down the different augments that they actually will sort of heavily change your play style. For example, there's one character who's sounds like they've taken like a Call of Duty squeaker and just thrown him in and made him an actual character in a video game. His banter is quite ridiculous. He plays either incredibly stealthy with an assault rifle, and you run around, go into stealth, break out of stealth, and most of that is geared towards doing lots of burst damage as soon as you break out of stealth. Whereas the other side of the Helix tree is based mostly on slightly tanking and his grenade launcher, which, as you can see, are 2 very massive differences in the playstyles. Other ones where you have healers, so one will be hard healing, the other one will be hard damage. And then you've got other DPS ones where it's just one form of damage or another form of damage. Like you might have one tree will be melee damage and the other will be ranged. So there is quite a massive variety. As far as sort of team symmetry and synchronization and all that jazz, it works out quite well. There's only one healer of the first 6 that you have access to. This little mushroom man called Miko, I think his name is. But as you unlock more characters, there's more and more healers. As far as the storyline with the multiplayer goes, there isn't really a storyline. It just tells you to go here and kill this guy and go here and kill that guy. But isn't that what we all know and love from the MOBAs? Now, the big thing that I was worried about this is, like I said before, I absolutely despise MOBAs as a whole. I find them really boring. They're a bit slow, especially to get up. Like once you're sort of about 7 or 8 levels in LOL or Dota, that's when it kind of gets interesting. But to start with, usually just bashing creeps and trying not to get your head kicked in. With Battleborn, it's a bit different. Like I said before, it feels a lot more fast-paced, which isn't a bad thing, especially when you're working with like a sniper character. There's 2 to start with, and both of them feel good. Like when you're shooting people from afar, getting used to the tracking in front of people takes a little bit, but once you got that down and you can land some hits, get some really, really good kills. Nothing like shooting a guy in the back of the head while he's running away to get health. As far as the assassins characters go, they're a lot harder to play, and it can be very chaotic. There's one particular guy, Wrath, he's pretty much just a cyber samurai. Has 2 big swords, and the whole time when you're attacking, there's literally just flashes of red all over the screen. If you're an epileptic, I would advise not playing him. It can be quite disorientating at times, and it's hard to sort of keep your spatial awareness that you need, especially in a game like this. You know, there's not any top-down view, so you can see all of the mobs that are hiding or the other heroes that are hiding. Because it's first person, people run up on you, and your mini-map is probably the most important tool that you have. Because as soon as you get into a 2v1, unless you've got a pretty good lead or you're just damn good, you're fucked. And that's just it. There's not much you can do. Pretty interesting what you can do is after you've murdered someone, you can then taunt them, and then the actual commentator of the match will sort of track along you killing that person, and then you pick up a rival and then that kind of thing, and you get more or less shards, which you use to build things in the actual games themselves and unlock your loadouts, which I'll talk about in a moment. And the commentator as a whole actually is quite interesting. Whereas on most games, you know, you've got in Dota and LoL, I'm going to keep referring to these because they're our standard MOBAs that we all know. They talk about, they pretty much just call out your kill streaks and say so-and-so is on a rampage or devastating and all that shit. Where really with Battleborn, it gives you status updates for what's actually happening in the game. So it'll say the enemy team has launched a giant minion, which means they've just got a tough motherfucker that's coming through, and I'm pretty sure they're worth extra points if they make it into the grinder on Meltdown, or they can make for a big push on incursions. The other thing with incursions in particular is you can actually recruit thralls, which is normally you would go jungling and kill the NPCs and the neutrals, which you do. But in this, once you kill them, you can summon them again, and then they're on your team. So you can summon a wave of them, and then after they die, they respawn. You have to kill them again, then you can summon them again, so far and so forth. That adds to sort of all the different things that you can do in the game, and the commentator will commentate all of that, and it will tell you when you have them up, it will tell you when the enemy has them up. It will say if you knock out 3 out of 5 of the team, it'll say that you have the advantage and it's time to push. If you wipe out the whole team, it'll tell you push, push, push. And so it sort of works with a prompt. So instead of having people yelling in chat at each other about we need to push this lane, we need to push that lane, it sort of helps you out, especially in such a casual platform as the PS4 and the consoles. And this game as a whole, it has the opportunity to become competitive like LoL and Dota, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't. The game almost doesn't really take itself in a very sort of important and like it's all a joke. The whole game's just funny. It's just a really cool, fun game to play. It feels good. That was the thing that the problem I was most worried with, was that while actually playing it, it wouldn't be responsive. The hit detection would be off. But no, it's pretty on point. As far as the loadouts go, like I mentioned before, and customizing your actual character. So I think the idea is you're supposed to pick one particular character that you like to play a lot, and then you would go through and unlock different skins for it. There's 5 or 6 different skins for each character. There's 3 different taunts you can unlock. While you're playing through, you will earn credits for playing each game as like a reward. With those credits you can then buy loot packs, and then there's your common loot pack, your uncommon loot pack, your rare loot pack, and it goes up like that. And when you get them, then you have random chances of unlocking different gear and drops, things like that. Now what you do with that gear is you put it into your loadout. You can have up to 3 loadouts, and in your 3 loadouts you have 3 slots. So you could have a loadout specifically designed for sort of like a maximum health loadout, or like myself, I like to use Miko, the mushroom guy with healing that I was just talking about, that I'm sure you've all probably seen on the countless other videos of Battleborn. So you could have a healing spec loadout, so you can go full down healing, or you could have a damage spec loadout, or you could have a speed spec loadout, or you could say, shit, my damage is a little high, but I'm getting pretty squishy. I'll just sub out my thing that gives me extra crit chance and throw in some shield that gives me more health, or a bigger shield, or makes my shield start regenerating faster. So there's all sorts of ways you can play around with it. It doesn't have your standard buying gear in the actual matches, which lasts for the entire match. You don't have to worry about that, but you do spend your currency on building and upgrading the buildables, which is what they call them, buildables, inside the actual game. As far as your combat goes and the ways that abilities work, very similar to every other MOBA you got. You have 2 activatable 2 abilities that you can activate on your L1 and R1. They do whatever, they vary wildly from character to character. Then at level 5 you unlock your ultimate, which is, as I'm sure you're aware, is your ultimate ability. Usually does a plethora of damage or a plethora of healing, depending on what character you're playing. R2 just generally does a standard attack. L2 will either zoom in if you have a sniper character, it might raise your shield if you've got a defense character, or it might attack double fast, double slow. In the case of Miko, it does a healing beam, so that's his healing side. And then you've also got passive abilities, so each character has a passive that usually is tagged onto their attack, and as they use their attack, it will activate whatever their passive ability is. And then usually they have a breakdown of their weapon, and most people's weapons do something. It's not just does damage. It's does damage, might leave damage over time, might get some life steal back from that, or there's one character where you charge up your beam while you shoot in rapid fire, and when you release, it actually shoots off a larger shot, so you can sort of use it to sort of snipe people, which can be pretty fun. And then underneath that, again, it has your specific character augment, which does, like, for example, Montana, who's the big hillbilly-esque lumberjack chap with a Gatling gun. His one is that as his gun heats up and reaches max, his max heat level to where it would need to cool down, he does more damage, and it sort of explains that. It explains that it can be augmented via his helix, which it can be. So the characters are all wildly different, which is really nice. There aren't any sort of two that you play the same. The only things that have similarities is whether you're playing a sniper as opposed to a tank, as opposed to a healer, as opposed to a melee DPS, as opposed to a ranged DPS. That's pretty much as similar as they get. It's all pretty different. They all play different. They feel different. They move faster. Some move slower. Some shoot fast. Some shoot slow. Some are all about skills. Some are all about being actually good with a marksman. Some just vomit bullets everywhere. But it's fun, and that's the big thing. When it comes down to it, it's surprisingly enjoyable combat. The story's good, and so far I like it. I think I'm going to pick it up. I was a bit iffy about it, and if you're wondering whether or not to throw down your 8 gigabytes of data on the beta, you should, even if you play it alone, because you can play it just against bots. Even the multiplayer versus, you can play against bots, just like the storyline. You don't even need to play with people. It's great. Anyway, thanks guys, and I will be around and releasing more videos on the Battleborn crew, all of the characters that I unlocked. I'm going to do a little brief sort of breakdown of how I thought they went, and there'll be more videos coming out between now and the actual launch date. Until then, like, leave a comment, let me know if you'll be picking it up, and so I'll be quite interested to see if this game actually sort of survives on PlayStation, and whether or not it actually has its biggest following on the PC. Probably not the Xbox, because come on, it's the Xbox. But yeah. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and have a absolutely lovely afternoon. Vullgaren out.